Hello everyone, welcome to my new tutorial, and today we are going to create some kind of cinematic text intro animation with some fire particles coming from below and some cool background. Could be the intro for some, I don't know, barbarian movie, whatever. It's all done with geometry nodes, so let's get started. So we start with our default cube. I've already renamed it to geometry nodes object. Click on it, click on geometry nodes and create a new geometry nodes setup. Disconnect the output from the input and delete the input. Now, because we want to create a string, create a string to curves node and plug that to geometry. In that area you can type in your text. I will take animation, and as you can see we got our text curves. You can play with the size, the character spacing, word spacing, line spacing and the max width. And now we want to fill it. Therefore we can grab a fill curve node, and now we can also see something in the rendered mode. Now we want to extrude the text. I'm pretty sure you can do that also with nodes, but the more easier way is to grab a solidify node. Therefore you have to select your geometry nodes object and add a solidify modifier. And as you can see nothing. That's why we forgot to add a realize instances node, because render does not realize the work that's done in geometry nodes as a real object, because it's all solved with mathematical nodes and expressions, and we have to add a realize instances node so that Blender realizes it as a real instance. And as you can see now, we can add some extrude depth. There we have it. So next step is, because I don't want to look up from above with my camera, I want to rotate it. So I add a transform node, and I will add that just in front of my fill curve. Transform. And I want to rotate it on the x-axis 90 degrees. So I can look in a 90-degree angle like that. Now we want to animate our text. Therefore we need some nodes. Now Blender only recognizes our geometry node object as one whole word, but we want to take each single letter. Therefore we have to create a translate instances node, and now we can point to every single letter. And now to animate the whole thing, we need a bunch of information. First of all, we need an empty object that will be our control of the animation, just like that. I will rename it animation control, and we drag and drop it in our scene. And we also need the position of each letter. Therefore we need a position node. Then we need a separate X, Y, Z node and duplicate it. So now plug the position node into the input of the separate XYZ, and the location of your empty object also into the input of the upper separate XYZ. So we want to move the letters in our Y position, but the empty object is moving along our X axis. So we take a math node, set it to subtract, and we plug in the X output from our object and the X output from our position of each letter into the subtract node. And now we need a map range node. Duplicate it and change the linear to smoother step. That will give us a very smooth animation and no linear animation from 1 to 100, from 0 to 100. Also on the other one, smoother step, and now plug in the value to the value input again here. And last but not least, we need a combine XYZ node. Combine XYZ. You have to move the instances a little bit, so something like that. Plug in the map range into the set value and the combine XYZ into translation. And as you can see already, something is moving, but it still looks pretty bad. We want to give them also a rotation. They should rotate around their own Z axis when they fly in. So we plug in the lower map range into our rotate instance node that we create now. Rotate instance node, and we plug that between our translate instance and transform node, something like that, and plug in the output to our rotation. And now we got something like that. And now, yes, that's the tricky part. I have to admit I had to play with these values a little bit, and the values that fits the best for me, you can play with it, of course, are 5 to 35 and below 4.283 to 6.283. You can play with it and adapt the animation the way you like the best, but with these parameters you can see the letters are coming in a very smooth way and they're rotating around their own axis. If you do only slight changes to it, maybe something like that and that, the rotation is not that good anymore, but you can play with it, and if you got any better results, please let me know. 3 and 6.283. So now we got our text animation. Now we want to give it a material. So we add a Z material node and plug it just to the end. And of course I've already prepared something. Where it is, typo material. I think I used something red, but of course it's all up to you. I have no light added. Wrong. Just will use that red one. So now we've got our text animation. Now we need some fire. To create our fire, we need to create our fire, we need some particles. I've already created them because it's not the main part of my tutorial. As you can see here, some fire particles. I created them with an icosphere and just deleted some geometry so that it looks like some ash particles. Now here I forgot to add an origin to geometry. So that's our fire particle, and now we need, of course, an emitter, and our emitter will be right below our text animation. So we create a new plane, make it something like that. Go to particle system and we create a new particle system. Go to render and we use our fire collection. Fire. At the moment our particles are just falling into the empty. We want to change that. We could now change our field weights and force field settings. We could change the gravity to -1 so that everything goes up in the air, but I like to play with real world parameters, so I just let the gravity at 1 so that everything falls down, and instead of that I will use a wind object that everything is blowing up like a real fire, because a fire is creating some kind of wind that goes up. Therefore we create a wind object, force field wind. And of course now I had to play with the parameters. I can show you my result of the wind settings I found are the best for that situation. I set it to type wind, shape plane. The strength I set to 11, flow to 1, noise amount about 10, speed doesn't matter, and wind factor we leave at 1. And when we look now to our fireplace, it's already starting to blow upwards. So now we can change our particle size. Therefore we go into our particles setup, and let's just check my notes. We will turn on rotation because we need some dynamic rotation. That is something like that and that. Render, we will change the size to 1.4 and scale randomness. So now I adjusted the camera. We move our fire object a little bit below the camera. And as we can now see, it's already starting to look like a fire, but of course it's all going up to uniform, and there is no wind in it, no randomness, and therefore we also create a turbulence object. Therefore, I can give you the values that work best for that situation, those that you don't have to make experiments. So for the turbulence object, I found the best settings for me here are 3, set flow to 1, noise amount to 1, seed doesn't matter, and I think that's all. Let's test it. And now we got some fire coming from below. I've already set some material to my fire. Just the first one is just a red tone, and the second one is something yellow. And I also set the emission from each setting, from each particle. The first one to 9, the second one to 5, and the third one to 15. So I think that works best in that situation. So now we have to set our focus, because our camera is a little bit out of focus. Where it is, depth of field, and we create a focus object. That's will be empty. We rename it to focus, and we place it just to our text. That's should be okay. Camera, focus, and now everything is in focus, and the fire is coming from below. And now the rest is pretty simple. I've already created some lights. I will show you my lights setup. It's an area light coming from below. It should be in the middle. It's a point light that's coming from above, so something like that, and a spotlight also coming from above, maybe something like that, so that we get some that situation. And we can just test it. Where is our geometry nodes, our animation control? There it is. And now it's coming in a very smooth way from the dark into the light. And the only thing I added was now a background picture. something like that. It's just a normal holiday picture with some mountains and a cool dramatic sky. And all you have to do now is play with the lights. Maybe I'll make the point. I think that was in the back so that we can see something. Something like that. And now we got our text animation intro. Of course, you can now animate the empty object. And if you want the animation going just the opposite, you only have to change these two values. Now, if you change the position of the empty object now, as you can see, it's animated just reverse. So that's everything for now, and hope you enjoy that tutorial and you can play with the animation. Thank you.